Hello, everybody. This is Monica Paolini from Senza Fili, and I'm your host today. And my guest is Geoff Hollingworth from Rakuten. So, Geoff, you don't really need any introduction, but I'll ask you one anyway, and then we can go and talk about our topic today. Go ahead.
Yeah, so Geoff Hollingworth, I've been in the industry since 2G, working in Rakuten Symphony in the marketing at the moment. And if we just give a bit of background, I mean, we're recording this because we've had some very passionate email trails and conversations on this subject, and we thought it'd be great to get it on camera. So let's see if we can achieve that.
Yes, and so the topic is something that is 5G a failure or a success? And Geoff and I have been talking about a lot of things, and most of the time we actually agree. But on this one, we absolutely disagree. So it's going to be a good conversation. So, Geoff, since you are the guest, I think you go first, and you tell us why is 5G a failure?
Yeah, and let's start by giving you a little bit of wiggle room here. So to understand if something's a failure or not, you have to actually define what success looks like. And there are different ways to define success. And I think that's where some of this conversation and difference of opinion comes out. And people are saying that the adoption is faster than ever, great success. And people are saying some of the technology introduced, great success. And people are saying, just wait, it will be a great success. And we'll see. And that's a landscape. I think my point of view, where I am quite black and white on this, is unfortunately technology and standards exist to serve economic return and commercial success. And the place where I think we all agree as an industry is that the promises of 5G made by some in the ecosystem, not all, but very vocally to get the support and the land shift into a massive investment, I claimed a large upside in terms of revenue, and to date, that hasn't shown up at all. So we spent a lot of money, and we haven't got any return in terms of monetary reward. And the question we have to ask ourselves is that a technology problem? Is it a commercial problem? My status on it being a failure is if commercially you can't realize technology, there's nothing there to pay for the technology the next time. And that's where we move into 6G.
Well, if 6G fixes the problem.
Oh, yeah.
But maybe we'll get towards the end, we can get to that. So my view is that 5G is perfectly fine, is that I completely agree with you. You know, we are all in this business for money, and not just operators, analysts, vendors, everybody, right? I mean, we're not nonprofits here. So we need to make sure that whatever we do generates money. Has 5G delivered on that? Not in the way we were expecting, because I believe that our expectations were so ill-founded. I mean, our expectations, and I mean the general consensus in the industry. And probably neither you or I ever believed in that, but, you know, sort of like the general expectation was that, you know, with 5G, the new services are so compelling that they're going to change our lives, and that we're going to be willing to spend any amount of money because you can't possibly do without them. That didn't happen. I think that we agree on that part. So the issue is that clearly 5G has not delivered on the financial promise. But my view is that the failure is not on 5G, because there is a technology out there. You decide whether you want to deploy it or not, depending on your expectations. However, if you misunderstand, or you sort of you have the wrong expectations on adoption, the problem is not the technology, it's your expectations. So we are, I mean, the industry is the problem. We failed at not seeing what I think was the obvious.
So first off, I know that this conversation a little bit in the industry is a bit like swearing in church. So and first off, I think you're coming to the first point. It was very hard to have a mantra 8 years ago that says, no, these projections are wrong. I only know of one person who actually had the bravery to come out, a guy called William Webb, who wrote this 5G myth book. I recommend everyone reads that. I think he wrote it in 2017. His prediction's completely correct. And that cost him a certain amount of business because he couldn't get paid in the 10-year system that, supported him. So I think there's a lot more credit to somebody like William Webb than somebody now saying, look, it didn't turn up. I think where I struggle with the process we've ended up. So let's look at standards as the result of a process and why standards exist. Standards only exist to remove friction where there is economic scale and success, so that there's less cost in the production and the scale of that. So there's more profit. In the early days of our industry, we standardized what had already been successful, and then we managed to go the whole way around the world in one system, never done anywhere else in any other business, any other industry. You can't just walk to another country and use it. That's amazing. But at one point around 3G to 4G, almost the technology standardization started to look for technology that we wanted to monetize without really understanding if there was a market there. So more and more functionality went into the standard process all the way up, from functional use case all the way down, making predictions. That all creates complexity, cost, and then if it rolls out, but there's no connection between that standard technology and a market opportunity, then we end up where the standard has caused the problem because it's not adding value to our business. And I think we need to get back then to simplifying standards and really doing things that are important to a core network and let the market handle the market.
Yeah. So first of all, I agree with you with what William Webb said was really important, but I kind of feel a little cold in calls here. And I never said that, I never believed it, I never supported those explanations, because I always talk about, don't think about revenues, which might not be there, but think about efficiency. However, I've never really been as sharp as I probably should have been. But said that, time to
we're just going to clip that bit out, by the way. We're just going to do a 5-second sound bite, and that's all we're going to send out.
Yeah. So anyway, but back to the standards. I completely agree with you. But the thing is that why should 3GPP decide that? So there's a lot of technologies out there we can either adopt or not adopt. And this has been true for, like, say, for IEEE 802.11, which is Wi-Fi, for instance, as well, right? So you have 802.11 has huge number of features, but only a few of them get adopted. Most of them sit there. So if there are a few vendors or operators that decide at 3GPP that they want to pursue a technology, even though it's not clear whether it's going to generate any money, why not let them do? But then you decide, well, vendors and then operators decide what to adopt. I mean, clearly you need to be careful in the sense that, yeah, you don't want to do something completely not working, but what's wrong with that?
Yeah, well, I think it is good to bring up as a parallel the Wi-Fi evolution and the Wi-Fi standards. And I think part of the problem we have in the mobile industry is one of actual scale and one of investment requirement and life cycle length. So when we roll out a standard in what we do, it costs hundreds of billions of dollars to just put it into operation and place, because we believe that the functionality there has to be ubiquitous across a total footprint. That leads to a very fragile ecosystem and a very fragile economic. Because what we end up doing is betting on technology in a big bang way that turns up every 10 years. And then if it doesn't traction, we've you know, let me give you an analogy. Let's say that I ask you for $800, Monica. I want you to give me $800, but by giving me $800, I'm going to give you a box, and that box is going to make you $1,000 when you open it. So you give me $800, and 3 years later, I tell you you can open the box and it's empty. You'd feel pretty bitter about the $800 you'd put in the box. Now, I'm then telling you, oh, hang on a minute, that's not the real stuff yet.
That's not the real box. I'll send you another one.
Yeah, I'll send you another box in a couple of years' time. This is the really good box, but I do need another $800. Now, I think it's really hard to. I think technology is hard. I think it is. I think it is a discovery process. Obviously, I think where it's hard in our industry and where we have to look seriously about what should be standardized and what shouldn't is the length of time it takes. Wi-Fi iterates through these standards a lot faster, and it's a lot more. There's a lot more. There's a great book, by the way, called Anti-Fragile, which is written by a Nobel economics guy. That's really easy to read. It explains that the best economic systems actually support collapse in certain parts, but not total collapse. I think the challenge we have is we're so homogeneous, and we believe in the mobile industry, almost the mobile network operators are there just to roll out the latest G. I don't really understand that either. I think the mobile network operators are there to provide the best possible service and experience at the most effective operating model and cost structure. So
actually, if I might just ask a quick thing, a quick thing here. So it's also like the government and everybody thinks that it's a race. So you need to do 5G because it's like a matter of national pride, which is stupid. I mean, why do I care? I just want to have what works for me. If I don't need it, I don't need it, right? So anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I mean, so now you're going to get on to I'm a marketing person in this business. I mean, I find that sometimes the way that we market what we do is a bit bizarre to me, even because I'm a customer of this as well. And honestly, I don't care. I've never chosen anything because it says 5G on it. I've got a 5G phone because I have no choice. Every phone. So saying the adoption is success is a bit like saying oxygen's more successful now than it's ever been because more things are breathing it. I mean, there's not a lot of choice out there. But the target of the G marketing brilliantly as an industry, I don't think is the consumers, and it's not the operators, it's the governments. It's getting the support to build this big impetus, this big wave, incredibly well done, versus Wi-Fi that it's really hard to understand even what Wi-Fi is sometimes.
Yeah. Well, and I guess, you just have all this PR behind it to get more spectrum and all that, which is kind of like the whole, which is not to say that you don't need more spectrum, but you don't need it for a G. You need it to meet the demand of people. Yeah. I mean, quite honestly, it doesn't matter what kind of technology you use. But so the question is then, as you say, the fact that we think that we need to kind of be we're too homogeneous. And, if you look back, I was thinking, if you look at MIMO, for instance, I don't know when it started to get into 3GPP, but at the beginning, a lot of people were very skeptical about it. But you had to start, and so you need to get the sort of like the $800 for 100. I mean, so it's a risk. So what you should tell me is that if I pay you $800, I might get 1,000, but you don't know for sure. Then it would be different, and my decision might be different.
Yeah,
And so I think that we need to kind of realize we kind of have more technology that we need, or that we know what to do with, or that it's useful to us.
well, another way to slice it out maybe is that some technologies have a longer lifespan than other technologies. So I anything to do with improvements in performance, capacity, efficiency of the connectivity and the network, I think is something that should be part of a process that's clear that it is good. And I think we are seeing parts of that in the standards process in terms now. We know that energy efficiency is something we need to focus on. Let's really work as an industry to. We're at peak energy at the moment. We never turn anything off. If we turn 10% of the network off globally, I mean, we've probably just saved like Europe's electricity bill for 6 months. The those things make sense, and they're what we're good at. Where I struggle in the standards place is where we start to try and have standards around charging in a 10-year process. We have higher level quality of service is a good one. Quality of service, there's mechanisms that are across all different networks everywhere. If you're delivering in a multi-network reality, which you are, then let's understand how to do that across all networks. That's what the actual customers are looking for. So it's my personal belief is that we're trying to standardize too much. Some things need to be left with freedom in the market because it takes too long. And I think the industry is moving this way, by the way, because as things move into software, that's how software works. You iterate much more granularly or on a granular level. I don't think the standards process has kept up with that.
Yeah, actually, and this is something that I've been gone on record forever, is that it's the whole concept of G's that it feels outdated. And I think that, it makes sense because to some extent, because you just have a target. It's like, deadlines are good. It doesn't matter what the deadline is about because it gets you to work on something. But it's just like this idea that there is a G that encompasses everything. It just seems like increasingly hard, especially where you have more incremental changes that are continuous and they are not directed by one vendor or another vendor or an operator, or they kind of like evolve. It's like basically it's the open source model. And you don't need to be open source, but 3GPP seems to be a little bit too heavy-handed.
I agree. I mean,
what do we need? So the question is that, do we need innovation? Yes. Is 6G the best way to deliver it? Not sure.
I mean, one thing that's interesting in parallel as well, I think we have seen a technology industry grow up around us during the life of the Gs. And obviously that technology industry, they're now the biggest companies in the world. And the biggest difference between the telecom, the mobile industry, and the technology industry outside it is that the technology industry runs on continuously improving economic unit costs. Telecom works on generationally improving economic unit costs. So we take big leaps in terms of economic progress once every 10 years. Every 2 years, there's a new chip that delivers 200% more capacity, and that's flowing through a supply chain into the technology companies. They're doing twice as much for half the price, and they're continuously evolving their cost structures down. And we haven't got that cadence. I think that's what we need to. We need to get to continuously improving economic unit costs like other technology leaders.
Yeah, but that's the thing, is that 3G, the structure of 3GPP is not quite moving in that. They're not evolving, and maybe that's fine, but then you become irrelevant.
Yeah, it's and that's where I think we see ourselves moving as an industry, unfortunately, that the momentum around us, because what we provide is so tremendously important to everybody. If we are not working at the same cadence and openness as everybody else, then people will work with us when they have to, but they'll go round us when they don't. And increasingly, they'll start to build their own solutions, which we've seen.
It's already happening.
It's already happening. There is a need. I mean, telecom is hard. It's massive scale. It's massive investment. It's highly complicated. So it's hard just to, you know, pretend that it's not important. It's absolutely central, but we have to change if we're going to take part in a different way than we are doing today, I think. But I don't know what to do with that. It's massively, I mean, if you wanted to change communism, how do you start changing communism where everyone is paid because they're continuing communism? It's so complicated. From the governments and the ITU all the way down to the operators.
So you're saying that 3GPP is like a communist organization?
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Keep it on
That's
record.
a good soundbite. That's a good soundbite.
We're doing pretty well here. But no, but I do see your point, and not only that, but you know, one thing that we worry about, like having more private networks, and private networks rely on some level of standardization, and that comes from 3GPP when it comes to cellular networks. The enterprise is not really represented at 3GPP for historical reasons. That is an issue. So I think that one of the reasons why its adoption in the enterprise is so slow is because they're not part of the standardization process. That doesn't help. But then how can you fix it? I don't know that there is. I don't even know you want to fix it. But
well, I think generally people do want to fix it. I think it's hard to find a way to fix it. This isn't I mean, the communism analogy is quite good in the sense that if you're in a system like that and your livelihood is supported by that, it's very hard to rebel individually against that system. Usually those systems only collapse because they have no choice. They're subverted externally rather than internally. But one place that you can start, if you really have to fix it, is by changing the voting power, the stakeholder power. So if the voices of the people who actually are the ones that are going to pay for this stuff increase, rather than the voices being so strong from the supply side who are trying to sell into them, I think that rebalancing of that voting structure would go a long way to.
The problem, who is going to drive it? Because right now it serves the constituency. So who is willing to give up their influence?
Well, I think you have to. I think that's a great question, and I think what you're describing is that people are always for change as long as it isn't them that has to change. I mean, that you're fundamentally picking up a human challenge with change. Change is good, except when it's happening to me. So I think that's where this complexity starts to come in. I think private networks is interesting because doing a private network for a mine is very different than doing a private network for an office block. So I think it would be interesting to try and get as much commonality across all mine operations as possible. Does that have to be in 3GPP? No, but they need just a network that's really easy to use, as automated as possible, and as cheap as possible, cheap and reliable, automated. And then me and all my mining community should collaborate above and build the best possible software solutions to run on a network like that. Yeah. They don't need to be part of a 3GPP process.
No, but the thing is, I guess you need to have like 6G next one is to have some of it that you can deploy in a much simpler way. This is just like a Wi-Fi. network. And there is not much of a drive to do that from, say, mobile operators, because they have a different mindset. And so there is that's what I mean, where the enterprise is not represented, because there is clearly a bias towards a public wide area network where you do need to have that complexity. That complexity is not optional.
Well, some of the complexity is an option.
But it's different than having an enterprise smaller network.
Well, I think if we could get I think you pick up on a brilliant insight that running mobile networks is a highly specialized job that is highly complicated. We haven't simplified that. Now, Wi-Fi has done a lot better job of simplifying operational issues, to the point where they do have managed Wi-Fi. Meraki is a great example, where the actual quality of service is really advanced, but at a very low price point. I think we are realizing we need to do this, and we have a lot of initiatives in the mobile network operators with automation and things. But we have to simplify the technology supply chain as part of a fundamental platform, as part of that industrialization process. Standards, it'd be good to help with that.
Yeah. Now, we have just a little bit longer, but let's talk about monetization here, because a lot of the failure stems from the fact that operators cannot make money. So, and you work at one. So how do we deal with that? That we have new technology, which works great, because it's not like 5G doesn't work, and yet we can make no money. How do we deal with that?
So I think there's
how do we think about it?
We're trying to sell technology to people who don't care. Why are we doing that? Why are we screaming from the rooftops that you can get 5G here? Nobody cares. Nobody cares, because it makes no difference to them. If we were selling hotel rooms, we'd sell a hotel room for the same price in Manhattan as we were in Oklahoma City. I mean, I think we've lost touch as an industry with what we need to have as a customer promise. I think initially, because our customer promise was so tied to technology, it was a lot easier. So do voice everywhere, and we're building networks that do mobile voice. So that's really simple. We've got disintermediated from the customer experience with smartphones. That's why the app economy took off, and 4G was pulled through. It didn't lead it, it pulled through. We're hoping, by the way, as an industry, that someone invents something that pulls us through again. But we haven't got a customer promise. Now, let me flip to my day job. And this conversation has had nothing to do with my day job, which is why I've enjoyed it so much. Rakuten has a very clear customer promise. It takes care of your digital life through a membership program, and it sorts out all of your needs, from financial transactions, now to connectivity, to communications, to travel. You can even book golf carts in Japan on it. And you get rewarded with membership points that then start to reward you back. Our customer promise is that you join as a membership and you get rewarded the more you spend. Great customer promise. We've just put mobile in as part of that. We have people in Japan who don't pay a mobile phone bill because they just pay on the points they've earned because of everything else they're spending in our ecosystem. It's a great kind of relationship. Whereas traditional telecom, I think the opportunity is to move to something like that, but traditional telecom is very unit-based, flat-based. It's a bit like airlines were before loyalty programs, actually, where it was just no one cared who they flew on.
I guess that the problem is that, when I have Amazon that is basically doing that, if my mobile operator starts doing it, is it worth it or not? I mean, with Rakuten it was different because Rakuten was sort of the Amazon doing it. So but I think that, your initial point is very important, that we're trying to sell things that people don't want. which is not to say that people do not see that they're beautiful things. So the fact that, for instance, I could do online gaming. I'm not a gamer, but let's say that everywhere I go, it's a beautiful thing, and everybody would acknowledge that. But doesn't mean that I'm willing to pay for it. No, there's a lot of nice cars out there. Doesn't mean that I'm going to buy it, even if I can afford it. No, I mean, there is a difference between having something that works and that it's wonderful and having people that are willing to open their wallet for it.
Yeah, but then you bring out another point that you're never connected to one network. There's never one network deployed. There's always 3 generations at least. And then 80% of the time, at least in the US, you're on Wi-Fi. So why am I going to pay more in case for the 10% or the 20% of the time, I accidentally stumble onto a 5G network and I'm gaming? It's now, if you sell me a service independent of any technology that guarantees, there's a good one, Airtel in India. I think it's Airtel. They've just launched a anti-spam service, because what is happening is that the first people who are industrializing AI are the criminals, and they're doing it, and the sophistication of spam calls and phishing attacks is unbelievably advanced already. So they are running now a service that promises to remove a huge amount of that attack base on you. So they're going to keep you safe online. I think that's a great value proposition. So now I'm not buying a device that just, gives me gigabytes of technology. What they're promising is that they're going to actually keep me safe online. That's a different value proposition that has a different price point. So I think we need to move into the world we are building, and the world we're building is scary because machines are going to look like humans, and they're going to do things that we maybe don't want them to do to us. And we need to start preparing for that. And I think as an industry, we're in a great place to actually provide services like that. But we have to get out of where we are.
Yeah. Well, we have to be realistic in terms of how much people are willing to pay for it, no matter what. And just because we have the technology doesn't mean that we have the power to sell. I mean, we have the ability to sell it, because that's a macroeconomic decision or a macroeconomic dynamics that we have no control of. 5G.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question to close us out on. And it's a prediction question.
Okay.
What year do you think the G symbol disappears from smartphone displays?
That's a good one. I don't know, but it's irrelevant already.
But it's still in the consciousness. We still mark it because it's there as operators.
Because we have nothing better.
But when it doesn't even exist, that's not our call. That's a display choice. It's already disappearing if you look at the UI design of Apple. It's already kind of slowly moving away. So when it's gone, will we still be speaking about Gs as an industry?
Like in Wi-Fi, you don't speak much about Wi-Fi 6, 7, it doesn't matter. So yeah, it's probably gonna fade out. But I would say like 5, 10 years from now, I see no point already. Because when they tell you that there is a 5G network, I know because I was testing that, you're actually, most of the time you're not, because you cannot get a voice call if you're on 5G. So even if there is a 5G network, you're actually on 4G.
Yeah.
So it's just completely, it just tells you, yes, there is 5G here. It doesn't.
That's awful, isn't it? Think about that. So it says there's 5G on your phone, but you're not on 5G. So what does 5G mean?
Actually, the bars are controversial too, but that's a topic for another podcast. So, Geoff, so much for sharing your thoughts with us. It was a lot of fun.
Oh, thank you. Let's see if anyone listens to it.
Absolutely. And we'll love to hear what you think about it. We've definitely had fun, and I hope you had fun too. Thank you so much for listening in.